Hello everybody and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Please like, share and subscribe. Your help in doing so has really grown the channel, and I've actually just gone over the 1,000 subscribers mark, so big thank you to everybody. You're all amazing. Really appreciate the support, so thank you very much. This is a secondary video really from my flat round or neither that I did yesterday. Within that concept of is it flat, round or neither, and it really, if you think it's round, that's fine. If you think it's flat, that's fine. But I've taken the concepts a little bit further with all the research I've done and the understanding of where we are currently. I believe there's more evidence that we're in a holographic realm, a simulated reality, a toroidal field of the collective consciousness creating the perception of the real world. And so I always call this place a realm because I think that covers everything quite nicely, encapsulates it all perfectly. So I came or produced or showed some evidence of the double slit experiment and the Kryst code or crystalline sequence. And so the significance of this connection, I think, can't be underlined enough really. It's a very important connection, and one that clearly shows a duality of my thought process of external influences or external experiments that have been done in the past that I can join together, which is one of my abilities of looking at stuff and seeing if there's a correlation with it, a joining together of, and so I've managed to do that, and so I think this video coming up I'll try and explain the importance of what we are and have, and the fact that we can now, or I can certainly from my mind, I felt there was a correlation but couldn't quite do it, and now we have visual impact on this, so I'm very pleased that I'm able to do this. And so cut the babble out and let's get on with the presentation, shall we? Okay. Right everyone, what we have here is the Fibonacci sequence and the crystal spiral or Kryst code. Now for those who like their numbers, the Fibonacci sequence or spiral is also known as the golden mean or phi, and that has a ratio of 1.618. And the Kryst code or the crystal code or crystal spiral has a mathematical ratio of 1.414. And in the previous show I demonstrated that something like a nautilus shell, I imagine a snail shell or any kind of other shell, would also have this kind of ratio that was very similar to the Kryst code. And so the nautilus shell generally is around 1.33 in ratio, but it varies and goes up and down, but that's an average. So I looked at that in a previous video, and so please do check that out, and also have covered this crystal spiral and the Fibonacci sequence before, but not quite like this. And it's very interesting that when we observe what we have in front of us, a spiral shape, it doesn't really tell us a lot, it doesn't really show a lot until we start to look at the actual shape when drawn in front of us, and then you can see the real difference of the shape difference it makes from the source spiral number sequence to the Fibonacci number sequence. And the source spiral sequence is the lotus of life fundamentally, and the Fibonacci sequence is known as the daisy of life, but actually it's the daisy of death. And so just a brief recap for those who haven't seen my previous videos. The Fibonacci sequence here, for that to grow, it has to take part of itself, and so will always use up the energy, can only be a parasitical system. So for instance, 0 plus 1 is 1, 0 plus 1 plus 1 is 2, 0 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 is 3. But what we're actually observing is, to get to 5, we have to have 3 and then go back to the 2 to create the next one. And so to get to 8, we have the 5, we have to go back to get the 3. So it's constantly consuming its own self, or parasiting off the energy to be able to do this. And at some point that energy usage will become so great that it will not only kill what it's, or deplete what it's sucking the energy off, to the point where it will collapse. As what we have with the spiral Kryst code number sequence is, everything doubles. We don't ever have to go back to create the next number. So if this was the Fibonacci, 4 plus 2 would be 6, but actually we get an 8, because the Fibonacci, the Kryst code sequence, the source spiral sequence, has positive and negative charge within it, and allows it to grow and develop and double in size from its own source creational code. So it's a vast difference, and what we would actually get is the Fibonacci sequence would attach onto the source spiral number and would take the energy off that to enable it to grow. And so this is a third party parasitical event. Now I've explained this before, and hopefully that makes sense a second, third or fourth time, because these concepts are difficult to get round. So the way this is drawn, this is all in black, and black signifies death, and the way this is drawn is in blue and a light brown, and we have a positive and a negative. I think brown is positive and blue is negative. It could be the other way around actually. In electrics, I'm obviously not an electrician, but and my dad will kill me because he is, but or was, but we can see here that we have a twin aspect, a duality of the positive and the negative, almost like the divine feminine and the divine masculine, to create and grow, as the Fibonacci does not have this ability or this system inside it. So we're going to go back briefly to the double slit experiment, and here we can see matter being fired through, and it creates two lines on the wall, and when observed the experiment creates this pattern. So the observer would expect to see the pattern, and so that pattern is created. And what happened was, when they ran it with nobody looking, they got this pattern across the wall. So we had the main big slit, and then we had patterns coming off which are equal distance to themselves, so equally apart from each other. Now this fundamentally is a waveform, and a waveform doesn't look like this in our minds. A waveform looks like this in our minds, and here we can see that the protons, atoms, or the matter being fired through here has created a disturbance, or a disturbance. Basically the atoms create a waveform by hitting themselves. So even though they fired one single atom, the atom was almost able to create itself into two and then one again, and create a resistance pattern or waveform that created this effect. So in actual fact, an atom or a proton or a particle matter is absolutely everything. It has every possibility, and it also has no possibility because it's sitting there in the neutral. It's like a car running in neutral gear. You can put it in first and it can go forward, and you can put it in reverse and it can go backwards. But at the point in which the car's just sitting there and running, it can be in both places or two different places at the same time. And this kind of reflects onto the Schrodinger's cat experiment, where the cat was placed in the box with a vial of poison that could break at any time, and the cat could be perceived as being both alive and dead at the same time. And this is the significance of other people's experiments, which I've been able to understand and try and put across into something that makes sense. So Schrodinger's cat experiment is purely an expression of the double slit experiment and the actual physical element or stage of the atom, particle or matter that is being fired through the double slit while not being observed. And I hope that kind of makes sense. But what we want to do now is concentrate on this waveform, because this waveform is very, very interesting and connects very much to what I've been talking about, the Kryst code. So here we have the Kryst code model in a shape, and it looks like a flower. We can see kind of the petal coming off, and this could be the center of the flower. And this is the lotus flower of life, fundamentally. But it looks very, very similar to the pattern created by the waveform of the particle matter that makes up this realm. In fact, it's not only similar, it's almost identical. So this shape here can be seen here, and this shape here can be seen here. And although the waveform is going off in slightly different directions and these are more elongated, we can see the correlation between the two shapes. So a waveform created by atoms, particles or matter that creates the reality, the physical reality of our realm, our existence, our perception of the real, has a direct connection and is identical fundamentally to the Kryst code, the crystal spiral. This means for me that the crystal code or Kryst code is directly connected to the makeup of our reality and is part of the building block of the reality in which we live in. They're one of the same, but they're a duality of energies working in harmony to create life. The Eden, in fact. Now what I've done is I've taken several different sources from the internet to kind of show you that this pattern isn't just from a cartooned version of the explanation of. And so here we have the atoms or the wave source coming from here. This is particle matter in effect, going through the two slits, and we get exactly the same kind of effect. What we see here, we observe here again, and we see very similar elongated shapes from the crystal code. So that's a secondary source. And this is the third source, and again we see the double slit barrier, the wall behind it, and this one actually shows the waveform that's created and the dark and light bands in which these will fundamentally hit that back wall. So that's all this is showing. It's showing the dark and light fringes, the intensity of the waveform, and the shape of the waveform. And here we have the Kryst code, Lotus Flower of Life, and it is fundamentally the same again. This means that the two systems are part of the whole that creates this reality. But what this also means is we can then start to look at the Metatronic flower of death, and we can see the inversion of this system, and the fact that we have characters in the past like Da Vinci, who was one of the source components of pushing this allegedly in the late 1400s, 1500s, early 1500s, clearly shows that the controlling power has wanted this to be in our psyche, has pushed this death cult ideology via pattern onto us. And that's a real big one. Sacred geometry is based on the Metatronic cube, the flower of death, the daisy of death, a parasitical system. And yet when we look at the crystal lotus flower of life, which is universal eternal consciousness, which then creates and turns into the toroidal field, which I've been going on about a lot. We live in a toroidal field of consciousness. There is no toroidal field of consciousness coming off Metatronic's flower of death, the black cube. And we can now see that via the double slit experiment very, very, very clearly that it follows this system. And if you do a search on Google, I can assure you it will then start putting in the golden meme of the flower of death, Phi, and it will not show you the crystal code easily, and it will start putting this kind of pattern over the top of this or replace it with. Now I think that's on purpose, and this has a bigger meaning and one that I've also been able to put together, and I am currently doing that, or will be starting. I've been doing the research and I will be putting that one together, but that's going to take some time because it's as you can imagine, it's quite complex. Just to get your head around this is difficult, but when you have the two together, it's very easy to see the difference. Not with the spiral shape of the snail shell or the nautilus shell shape. It's impossible for the human eye really to tell the difference, I think. But when they're drawn out in front of us in this format, it's very easy to see the difference. And so this is my last slide, I think, from memory. And here we have the waveform creational waveform of life, and we have the Fibonacci sequence, and we have the crystal sequence next to each other. You make up your mind. Does this one look like this one, or does this one look like this one? We have been lied to all our lives. Everything we have ever been taught, told, or shown by authority, or our parents took from authority, is an inversion of the truth. That's a real big one to get your head round. Unlearning the programming of the Metatronic cube control system is huge. I don't expect it to happen overnight. But when you have knowledge like this and information placed to you in front of you to understand the difference between sacred geometry that really is not and the crystalline system, the lotus flower of life, we have a duality. We have the good and we have the bad, the yin and the yang. It's drawn in many different ways, it's explained in many different ways. We had a parasite come into our realm thousands of years ago that has created the situation we're in now, with all the negativity, death and pestilence. We're about to change that, and we are going to change that, because I go to this slide at the beginning. The Fibonacci sequence is a lower vibrational frequency, and the crystal spiral is the higher, and at axis 7 we split off, and we are currently at and around this axis 7 point. In fact, I should imagine, and it's probably likely, that the axis 7 point actually was hit in 2020, which was the start of the revelations in the Bible, which is something I need to go into as well. But we have a split coming, a difference in control, vibrational frequency. We had the 7 planet alignment here recently, possibly here, denoting the split. In 2040 we have another 7 planet alignment, and I think that's very significant, and I will talk about that in the future in more depth. I may have briefly covered it, or covered it slightly with Meten in our Platonic Planes 2 chat, which is well worth listening again, because we do go through some of these concepts, but I don't show it so easily. But fundamentally, if you want to, in terms that you understand, the Fibonacci is 3D, the crystal spiral is 5D or 4D. It's a higher vibrational frequency. It is the source code to the creator. It's the source code to the creator. The Fibonacci sequence is the source code to Metatron's cube, which is the total opposite to the creator. And the double slot experiment with the waveform shows that particles, atoms or matter in the realm that makes this realm up, this matrix up, this holographic simulation, this toroidal field of consciousness, is the crystal spiral and not the Fibonacci. And the Fibonacci is one big fat misinformational lie to cause humanity to stop evolving and create stress and negativity. Now, how do we get out? There we go. So, hello everyone, back again. Hopefully that worked. So yeah, this really does show a change, and this also links back to Operation Looking Glass, when the elites, the dumb elites, stopped the program, halted the program, because the Fibonacci sequence was always going to collapse at some point. It couldn't sustain itself. It was parasitical, just like they are. They live and feed off our toil, our energy, just like in the film Monsters Inc. They're the ones coming in, taking the loosh, the energy off us. But that's now stopping and slowing down, because the crystal spiral and the Fibonacci are splitting. And one group of people is going to be stuck in this realm, the parasitical realm, and another group of people are going to get out of this realm. So the choice is yours, what you would like to do. But understand the science backs up the theory of the crystal spiral, and there's a direct correlation between the two. And for me, that gives me so much hope and confirmation of my thoughts. It's the reason why Operation Looking Glass was shut down, because they could see the split and there's nothing they could do about it. Yes, they're causing destruction, and yes, they're causing as much mayhem as they can, because they know that this is the last big meal they're ever going to get. And we have the power to stop that, because we are immortal beings of infinite potential. We are the love and we are the light. We have nothing to fear. We have this. It's been shown to me, and I have spoken about that previously. I couldn't tell you which video it was because I've done so many recently, but if you search, I'm sure you'll find it. But it was shown to me, and now I am finding proof, because everyone likes to sit down and see something in front of themselves to see the reality of, and have a bit of proof in what somebody's saying. So we're not just saying, oh, you know, there's a split and everything's going to be wonderful and we're going into the golden era and such like. It's not a case like that at all. I'm not the sort of person that does that kind of thing. But there is change coming, and it can't be stopped, and the change is good for us. It's like a prison sentence coming to the end, and that door is coming wider and wider open to the point that we will walk through it, and there's nothing they can do about it. So, with that, please love yourself, look after yourselves, and take on this positive message. Please like, share and subscribe this message out, because it's very important. It's proof that we're not crazy. There's scientific evidence that correlates with what we're saying, and we can prove it. And that's wonderful. So, blessings everybody. Look after yourselves, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye.